One of the most common questions I get asked is, how much do I need to retire? Well, here's the answer. It depends. I know that wasn't what you were looking for. Everyone's looking for a magic number. They're looking for the answer. But it's just not that simple. There are a lot of factors that come into play when we are trying to determine, can we stop working and go on a permanent vacation? I know some people don't like to use the word retirement. It's financial freedom. It's work optional. Whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. Now, what I want to do is I can show you an example client of what if we had $2 million and we were going to turn 60 next year and wanted to retire. Is that enough? A few things that's going to play out here is we're going to have to look at their goals, their spending habits, how much they've saved, what type of accounts they're in, what type of investments they're using. All of those things are going to be factors that we might have to change to make this work. I'm Dwayne Reinike, your favorite financial nerd and the owner of Valiant Financial Planning. Let's jump into this. So here are some example clients. We have Clark Kent and Lois Lane. Can you tell I'm a nerd? And they are 59 years old. They're going to turn 60 January of next year, and they want to know, Dwayne, can I retire right now? Let's see. Let's find out. So right now they have $2 million that they have saved up. They have $800,000 in Clark's 401k, $700,000 in Lois's, about $100,000 in the bank, and a brokerage account with $400,000. Primary house, it's worth about $800K. They've already paid it off. They bought it 30 years ago, just paid that sucker off. And credit card that they, spend up during the month and they pay off at the end of every month. So no big deal there. And for income, Clark and Lois, they both make about $200,000 a year. But Clark, he works for a tech company now. He left the Daily Planet. Now he's working for a tech company and gets about $100,000 a year of RSUs that vest. So altogether, they have about a $500,000 dual income household. They're maxing out their 401ks, and they save a little bit of those RSUs every year. Maybe they diversify them into an equity portfolio of random stocks that they choose. Who knows? And they currently have about $8,000 a month of just normal living expenses. For goals, I have a couple of things that I always tell people that we need to start with, right? We got to at least assume some of the boring things. Like I start with assuming that everyone lives to be 92 years old. Now, I know that's not the case, and some people have a history of health problems, right? So always we can adjust those to be more specific. But if I start there, they're 60 years old, so they have about 32 years left of living that they need to do. We got to assume how much are they going to spend every month in retirement on a normal month, just the normal living expenses. And for them, they say that their lifestyle's not going to change much. So $8,000 a month would be pretty normal for them. We have to assume some unfun things, healthcare costs, right? So they're not 65 yet. They're not going to be on Medicare. So we have to assume, try to make an anticipation of what are their healthcare costs going to be for this next 5 years. And then we can assume what those Medicare costs will be in the future. Another one of the things that I tell people you should probably assume is that you have some long-term care needs at the end of life, right? So in the last couple of years that we're alive, we could assume that we might have to have a home aide come and help out, or you might have to live in a nursing home or something like that. So for them, I have an assumption the last 3 years of their life that they have a in-home care. But everyone can plan on that, how they feel should be done. That's how I like to do it. All right, so then we get into some of the more fun things, right? They like to buy new vehicles every so many years. So we assume every 5 years they get a new vehicle, and then they drive that vehicle for 10 years. So Clark will get his next new vehicle, I think this year. Yep, Clark's going to buy a vehicle in 2025 and 2030. Lois will get her new car. We have to assume some home improvement projects and home maintenance. So my assumption here is every 4 years they have to spend about $10,000 to do some sort of a home repair, something like that. I'd rather assume higher and they end up spending lower. And then some of the fun things is maybe travel. They like to go on vacations. They want to travel the world. That's one of their goals. And so right now, before retirement, they spend about $20,000 a year on vacations. They go on maybe 2 big vacations a year, and they like to do overseas travel. Once they retire, they're going to have more free time, so we bump that up to $30,000 a year. They also are charitable. So one of their goals is to be sure that they can continue contributing to their favorite charity. About $1,000 a month they do on that. So that's what we have in there. This is going to be different for you. Everybody's goals are different. And that's one of the big key takeaways here is if we have different goals, our retirement plan is going to need to be different. But let's see. Okay, what does this get us, right? Okay, so what we see here is that we have a 56% probability of success. Now, my aim is to get them over 70%. What we're doing is we have a Monte Carlo analysis. We don't have to dive into how that works in this video, but just know that we are trying to get our clients over 70%. So in this situation, there's some changes we would need to make to get them to that point. I don't want to get them too high. 100% isn't the goal. We can dive into why that is on another video, but my goal is to get them to 70%. That gives me a high chance that they're not going to run out of money before they pass away. If these were clients of mine, the first couple of conversations we would have, if I saw their probability of success at 56%, would be to look at their portfolio and look at their asset allocation there. And then I would look at their Social Security strategy. Right now, their Social Security strategy is to take Social Security at their full retirement age, which is 67. It's not a bad plan, but I like to look at what if we waited longer? And the latest you can wait is age 70. So what if we did that? What if we took it at age 70? And those are the two changes that I made in this plan is I added a more aggressive portfolio strategy with a better asset allocation and waiting till 70 to take Social Security. So with the portfolio, one of the things I see a lot is people don't know what they don't know. And in their Works 401k, they use the target date funds, which are a great and easy way to have your 401k invested automatically for you without you having to really think about it. But we don't always pick the right years. They have a target date and the date on there. You have to pick the right one that really suits your portfolio. And they can be a little more conservative than is necessary. So what I do is go through and make a more strategic portfolio, something that is a little bit more tailored to the client and their spending and their needs and their goals and things like that. So for these clients here, I would adjust their portfolio, and just those two changes, they move from a 56% probability to 71. And for me, that's kind of a win right there. Now, what we'll see there is, remember, they had a portfolio of about $2 million. And it says that they're going to pass away at 92, and they're going to leave behind about $3 million, right? It's actually going to go up. Now, one of the reasons why we see that portfolio kind of not really decrease over time, but actually increase is because of the withdrawal rate. Now, early on in their retirement, you remember, they're retiring a little early. We're postponing Social Security. So they're actually going to have a pretty high withdrawal rate early on. You're going to have 7%, some years 10%, 11.5%, right? Most of the time you hear these phrases people say, like, you need to have a 4% withdrawal rate or a certain specific number. I like to throw that out the window. Everybody is different. Every year is going to be different. There are going to be some years where you need to buy a new car or replace the roof on the house. It's not going to be the exact same. And so for these particular clients, they would have a higher withdrawal rate early on. And then whenever they turn 70 and start taking Social Security, and now the withdrawal rate is much lower, and they're able to kind of make up a little bit of that difference there in these years. So let's look at a couple of things, right? We noticed that portfolio actually goes up over time during this scenario, right? We can see those first 10 years or so of retirement until they turn age 70, their portfolio stays about the same. Here in the green is the proposed one. And then once they start Social Security, it starts to increase in value, right? At that point, they are spending less than they're earning. We can look at that in a few different places. Here in the invested assets screen, we can look at the ending balance every year. We can look at a couple of things, right? Here it is at age 60, right? We can see that every year it's kind of hovering around the same area. Now they turn 70. Here's the portfolio returns, $220,000 that year. And they're only going to need to withdraw about $84,000. So from that point on, once they hit that Social Security age of 70, where we decided we were going to postpone and start taking it, now they're returning more portfolio growth than they are using every year. So that's why at that point, their ending balance begins to grow. Another thing I want to point out is we have an ending balance of $3 million, 3.1. Now, this is 32 years into the future. What does that mean then? That means that this $3.1 million isn't going to be able to spend the same way as $3.1 million does today, 32 years from now. So if we changed it to today's dollars, that would be the equivalent of having $1.3 million today. So we can see that they're starting with $2 million, right? And it's going to grow to 3.1 million, but the purchasing power is actually going to slightly decrease. But nothing to really be concerned about, but something to note, right? Just to kind of keep that into perspective. I'm going to change it back to future dollars because that's typically how we want to plan. Now, I wanted to look at, well, what if they actually had a more expensive lifestyle, right? So here on the right, now that was our plan we were just playing with. Now on the left here, this is if they were actually spending more in retirement. They had a $10,000 a month living expenses. That's a little bit more. In that situation now, all of a sudden, that drops from 71 to 46%. Same portfolio here. We have the same age 70 Social Security, but now they're at a 46% probability. Again, doesn't mean that they're going to run out of money, but now we've kind of increased the odds that we need to make some changes there. So one of the things we could look at is, well, what if they retired a little later? Right, their goal is to retire next year, but they, Dwayne, we actually think we might want to spend more when we're retired. How can we make that happen? All right, so what I did is I made some adjustments. So if they wanted to live a more expensive lifestyle, then my recommendation might be to just delay retirement by 2 years. If we pushed it back from 60 to 62, we could increase their monthly living expenses from $8,000 to $10,000, and we could even increase their annual vacation spending up to $40,000 from $30,000. So that would be, something that we could look at. I always like to try to say, it's never a no. It's a, well, how can we make it happen? There's a few other things that we can look at as well. What if they actually have a less expensive lifestyle? So in that scenario here, if they were spending $6,000 instead of $8,000, they bought cheaper vehicles, they bought or they went on less expensive vacations, then we would be at a 95% probability of success instead of a 71% probability of success. Again, that's probably overkill here. They would leave behind a lot of money on the table. Those are a few things that could kind of help us determine whether $2 million is enough to retire off of. One of the other things is, well, your age is going to be a factor into that, right? So these people want to retire next year. They have $2 million right now, and they're going to be 60 next year. But what if they were younger, right? So if a 40-year-old came to me with this question, or a 50-year-old, it's going to be a different answer. We could have all those same factors, but our age is different. And so that's going to be a different question. Okay, here we go. I'm going to change. Clark is now going to be 50 years old next year. Same thing with Lois. And we have changed their retirement age to be 50. So next year, when they turn 50, they're going to retire. And their outcome comes up with a whopping 11% probability of success. And with those same changes that I proposed to the last clients, that only moves them to 29%. So we can see that's a humongous difference, right? Their living expenses, everything, that's going to be a humongous difference. It's a completely different scenario now. Now we're really going to have to start planning really hard on the things that we could do to get them on track. But all is not lost. With Clark and Lois, if we made some adjustments to that original plan, we can find a way. I think there's always a way, but it's what sacrifices are we willing to take to make it happen. So if they're age 50 and they want to be able to retire with $2 million, they might have to spend less money. They might have to look at other things. So what I explored here was, what if they actually increase the equity in their portfolio? So that would be one thing that I would change about their portfolio with this scenario is they would probably need to increase the amount of equity that they actually have. So that would be something I would explore with them. We would also explore spending less. This is going to be the hardest thing for them. They're spending $8,000 a month right now. We're going to need to drop that to about $4,500 a month. And that's a big drop. This is where the deal breaker might be for them. They'll say, okay, we're not willing to make that sacrifice. What else? What other kind of sacrifice could we make? So what we could explore is, what if they don't retire permanently? What if they both work part-time and now their new household income is $100,000 a year instead of the $500,000? That could keep their living expenses the same and get them back up over 70% of probability of success. Now, again, I would increase the equity. We would explore a couple of other things that we would want to do since they're younger, but this could be the start of a really beautiful plan to get someone with $2 million being able to retire, even if it's maybe not fully, but they could start having that more time freedom, that freedom lifestyle with a much smaller workload, maybe something more of a passion project that they enjoy, or they could start a business where they're earning a lot less, but still supplementing some of that spending. So, well, I hope that that was beneficial. Again, the question I get a lot is just, can I retire with blank amount of money, or how much money do I need to retire? In that answer, it's going to be different for everyone. So you would want to go through with your very specific situation, your portfolio, how much you've saved. Are they in pre-tax or Roth accounts? Do you own your home, or do you still have a mortgage on it? Do we have kids? Are we helping them with college or something like that? All of these are going to come into that scenario, and all those little pieces. There's going to be tons of ways that we can make it happen. Can we retire? It's not a one size fits all answer. Everyone's situation is a little different. I hope you found this informative. I will make more videos like this answering some of the other questions that I get commonly from people. Take care, and this was your favorite financial nerd, Dwayne Reinike.